Hey there, fellow gamers. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're exploring a topic that's sure to bring back some cringeworthy memories: the worst gaming consoles ever released. From eye-straining graphics to marketing blunders, these consoles had big promises, but ultimately fell flat. Ready to cringe with me? Let's dive in. First on our list is the notorious Nintendo Virtual Boy. Launched in 1995, this console was supposed to be the next big thing in 3D gaming. Instead, it gave us headaches and eye strain. Seriously, who thought those red and black graphics were a good idea? And the design was so awkward that playing it felt more like a chore than fun. Unsurprisingly, it didn't last long, with Nintendo discontinuing it just a year later after selling only around 770,000 units. Despite all that, there's a small group of die-hard fans who still collect the Virtual Boy today. Not because it's a stellar gaming experience, but more for its infamous spot in gaming history. It's a reminder that even gaming giants like Nintendo can trip up when they take risks that just don't pay off. Next up is the Atari Jaguar. This console was marketed as the first 64-bit system, but let's be honest, the games and that bizarre controller didn't live up to the hype. Atari was desperately trying to stay relevant, but the Jaguar's flop marked the end of their run as a major player in the industry. You can't help but wonder what they were thinking with that controller design. The Jaguar's claim to fame was being 64-bit, but it actually used two 32-bit processors, which didn't translate into better gaming. And don't even get me started on the controller. It had a numeric keypad. Like, who was that even for? The game library was super limited, with only a few titles worth your time. Atari's last-ditch effort was pretty much doomed from the start. Moving on to the Philips CDI, released in 1991. This console was supposed to be more than just a gaming device. It aimed to be a multimedia hub, but with a clunky interface and a disappointing game selection, it failed to impress. Not even the infamous Zelda and Mario titles could save it, and trust me, those games are better left forgotten. The CDI was meant to be a jack-of-all-trades, but it ended up being a master of none. The gaming aspect, which should have been its strong suit, was just plain bad. Those Zelda and Mario games are legendary for all the wrong reasons, showing that even the best franchises can stumble when mishandled. Now, let's talk about the Gizmondo, a handheld console from 2005 that was marred by a high price tag, poor marketing, and some serious business scandals. Even though it had a few decent games, its shady background overshadowed any potential it might have had. The Gizmondo tried to combine gaming with mobile phone functionality, GPS, and multimedia, but it was just too much for one device to handle. The high price and lack of good games didn't help either. And with the company behind it, Tiger Telematics, involved in all sorts of scandals, it's no surprise the Gizmondo became one of the biggest flops in gaming history. Let's not forget the Sega 32X, an add-on for the Sega Genesis that was supposed to give it 32-bit capabilities. Unfortunately, it was released at the worst possible time, right before the Sega Saturn, and with hardly any good games to justify its existence. The Sega 32X was meant to be a great way to extend the life of the Genesis, but instead, it just confused everyone. Sega's internal conflicts didn't help either, leading to a chaotic strategy. There were a few decent games, like Doom and Star Wars Arcade, but they weren't enough to save the 32X from being a failure. Sega fans were left disappointed, and many just skipped the 32X altogether in favor of the Sega Saturn or Sony PlayStation. Next is the Ouya, a Kickstarter sensation that sadly turned into a massive disappointment. Released in 2013, this Android-based console was supposed to revolutionize gaming, but instead, it gave us a lackluster game library and poor performance. It's a classic case of big promises with little follow-through. The Ouya raised over $8.5 million on Kickstarter, which is impressive, but when it finally hit the market, it became clear that the console was underpowered, the controller was uncomfortable, and the game library was full of poorly optimized mobile ports. Despite its goal of democratizing game development, the Ouya just couldn't attract enough quality games, and most of them were already available on other platforms. The whole thing ended up being a lesson in managing expectations and delivering on promises. Let's talk about Apple's attempt at gaming, the Pippin. Released in 1996, this console was Apple's big move into the gaming world, but with a high price and a limited game selection, It couldn't compete with the established consoles and quickly became an afterthought. The Apple Pippin was an interesting idea, combining personal computing with gaming. But at $600, it was way too expensive for what it offered. Its game library was small and unimpressive, especially compared to what the PlayStation and Nintendo 64 were offering at the time. Apple didn't put enough marketing or support behind the Pippin, and it quickly became a forgotten chapter in their history. Another one for the books is the 3DO Interactive Multiplayer, released in 1993. This console was actually pretty powerful for its time, but with a price tag of $700 and a lack of compelling exclusive games, it never stood a chance. Sometimes even good hardware can't save a bad business model. The 3DO was created by Trip Hawkins, the founder of Electronic Arts, and it was supposed to set a new standard for gaming consoles. But at $700, it was just too expensive for most people. While it did have some notable games like Gex and The Need for Speed, the lack of first-party support and exclusive titles meant it couldn't compete with more affordable options. The 3DO is a prime example of how important it is to balance hardware quality with affordability and strong software support. Despite being the follow-up to the wildly successful Wii, the Wii U struggled with poor marketing, confusing hardware design, and a lack of third-party support. It's one of Nintendo's biggest commercial failures, but it also paved the way for the success of the Switch. The Wii U was supposed to build on the success of the Wii, but its confusing name and marketing led to a lot of people thinking it was just an accessory for the Wii, not a whole new console. The gamepad was a cool idea, but developers didn't really know what to do with it, which meant there weren't a lot of great exclusive titles. Despite having some awesome games like Super Mario 3D World and Mario Kart 8, the Wii U just couldn't gain traction. But hey, at least Nintendo learned from their mistakes, and the Switch is a huge success because of it. Lastly, we've got the Commodore CD-TV, released in 1991. This console tried to combine a computer and a gaming console, but it didn't do either well. With a high price and no clear focus, it quickly disappeared in the competitive gaming market. The Commodore CD-TV was supposed to be this all-in-one multimedia powerhouse, but at around $1,000, it was way too expensive for most people. Plus, it didn't really excel at anything it was supposed to do. The game library was small and forgettable, and the marketing was a mess. People didn't even know what the CD-TV was supposed to be. It's a classic example of how trying to do too much without a clear focus can lead to failure. While these consoles didn't have the advanced technology we see today, they still set expectations that they couldn't meet. Each of them had the potential to be something great, but they fell short because they didn't take the time to fully develop their ideas or test them thoroughly with actual gamers. If these companies had invested more in refining their concepts and understanding what players truly wanted, they might have created something revolutionary instead of a product that quickly faded into obscurity. However, these failures weren't in vain. They left behind valuable lessons that have helped shape the gaming industry into what it is today. The missteps of these consoles pushed companies to be more mindful of consumer feedback and to prioritize quality and innovation over rushing a product to market. In a way, these flawed consoles paved the way for better, more successful gaming experiences, such as the PlayStation 2 and Xbox One, by showing what happens when companies overlook the importance of listening to their audience. As gamers, we owe a small debt of gratitude to these misfires for helping to push the industry forward. So that's the list, folks. The worst gaming consoles that tried to leave a mark but ended up missing it by a mile. Do any of these consoles ring a bell for you? Or maybe you have a different take on them? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into the gaming world. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.